This is Jason LaScola. I'm a part of the enterprise architect team here at ServiceNow, and we are going to cover part 2 today of the trials and tribulations of a CSDM implementer. So this is the Digital Services Forum. We have our bi-weekly webinars, and this is part 2 of a session we had a few weeks back. So without further ado, we'll move forward. Just wanted to welcome our new members. As I mentioned here today, if it's your first time with us, please share your name, company, and what you do in the chat, and so you can be welcomed by our other members. Welcome to the group. About our forum, right now the vision is to be a leader in the digital transformation thought leadership. We want to enable our members to drive their own digital transformations. We want to share work, discussions, papers, shared instances, and share capabilities, instances, and videos. We host this, so the Enterprise Architect team at ServiceNow hosts the Digital Services Forum. And we do have these bi-weekly hour-long web meeting sessions and special events. So at the end of this, before we turn it over to the speakers, John Spurko will make a couple statements as well related to membership and signing up and the forum itself. So we'll have that in here in a minute. The agenda today is the trials and tribulations of CSDM implementers part 2. So the part 1 was Eric, Barry, and David providing an overview of their role and giving you some overview of the work that they do and some of the best practices they have. This is going a little bit deeper today. So we really look forward to having David, Barry, and Eric provide their expertise in the CSDM using ServiceNow, and hopefully that'll help our community really understand, how to do this and what some of the best practices around it. Feel free to use the chat as well for questions. What we'll do is take a few questions towards the end of the presentation. So we want to leave some time, let the speakers have their session, and then we'll try to address your questions there as well. And then we do have the forum. So after the session, you can go back to the forum itself and then add any questions you have there in the comments, and we'll get back to you, as soon as possible on that. Myself and the Digital Services Forum team, which I will show you here, we'll be monitoring that chat or those comments as well. So our steering committee, John Spurko, myself, Rachel, and Charles Bartley are the team that support this and provide the content for you and host the sessions as well. Okay, today's meeting is the part 2, and you can see we have the list of future sessions. We only have 2 more this year. So we'll talk about digital product operating model, and then we'll do the year in review as well in December. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to John real quick to say a few words. John, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
You're welcome.
Go ahead and take your screen real quick, and I just want to show a couple things on what we've been working on.
Okay.
Right, so the Digital Services Forum, a couple of you emailed me over the last few weeks because your links don't work anymore. So there's a new forum that's out there now, and you can come up and I'm logged in right now, but you can go ahead and register for this forum. So it's our forum. It's everything that we're doing on this call. And what I've been doing is putting in, this is the meeting today. I've been advertising the meeting in there so that you can go and get the registration link for the meeting if you ever lose that and want to get registered for future sessions. If you see the old sessions, they'll have the date on there when we went ahead and recorded it. Or what you can do is you can go, well, let me show you. If I go into one of these, this is the one we did on October 13th. So if you go ahead and click on this link, it'll take you to that meeting, but it'll also give you access, because a lot of people, what they take away from this meeting are the slides. They'll use a slide or two that maybe Eric or Jason showed. So here are the slides, and then here's the video on YouTube. So the slides will take you to another link. And then I just want to show you one quick thing on here. So sometimes if there's two presenters, like there were here, we had our ServiceNow team present, and then we had our professional services, some teams from there. So there's two items in here. So you'll be able to switch back and forth on those items. So when I do send you the content links, you might not see the slide you're looking for because you haven't switched to that other item. Okay. The other thing we have too is if you want to go direct on these, there is another, there's the Digital Services Forum playlist, and those are both linked in the bottom of the meeting invite. So Trials and Tribulations, somebody's watching that last movie, but this is all of the sessions that we've had so far this year. So it's kind of linked twice. I put it on YouTube, then I'll come back and I'll put a link in our community, but our community also has access to those files. So this way everybody's up. I was getting a lot of emails saying, hey, where are the files, where are the slides? So when they're available to me, I'm going to put them up on that community link. So go ahead and register. Makes it really easy to get notifications when those files are available and also when the recordings are available. That's all I wanted to share today. So I'll hand it over to, I think, is it Eric or?
I'll be presenting, but Barry's going to start.
All right, Barry, all yours. I'm going to stop share.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, you share. So welcome everyone. Let's go to the introduction page, Eric. So my name is Barry Kant. I'm a workflow solution architect based in the Netherlands. I work primarily in ITSM area, but do a lot of CSDM work. I'm acting in my team in EMEA as a CSDM lead. My experience is 20 years in IT, in which 20 years ITSM as well. And for the last 10 years, I do CSDM. It was named somewhat different, but concept-wise, it is the exact same, so pretty familiar. I do a lot of implementations in manufacturing, finance, banking, and a lot of remediations on CSDM. I think between 8 and 10 a year, something like that. And those are never be the same, so it's always a new challenge. Yeah, thank you, Eric. Go to the next one. So I want to take you a little bit on how I do an engagement. So I get my my engagement from our resourcing team. The scope is nearly always unclear at the start, so it is you can do CSDM, find out what it is about. So it's always a bit of a challenge. So the way I approach it is that you start with awareness sessions and a current state assessment. And what is really important is to see what is the target scope where we want to aim for. Normally I do a POC, a proof of concept, and then we validate and do an impact analysis and make a run book for a production. Yes, please, Eric. So the way I start with an assessment is a number of CSDM awareness sessions, so short introductions basically. It depends. Sometimes I work with a core team on the customer side. Sometimes it is a bigger team, so with a high number of stakeholders. And when I think the awareness is settled, then I do my exercise on deep dive into the customer instance. So I use a number of scripts. I try to figure out what the data quality is, foundation data, CMDB data, primarily if it is consistent. It can be not correct, but still it can be consistent. That is a different topic. Then the discussion on what the ambition is, that is a platform owner discussion, or maybe what does the company want with ServiceNow in the roadmap. So what is the target? You get way different answers. It can be coming from or driven from IT, or driven from C-level, or driven from the business side. Those are really different entry points. And it might be complete different scope. If it is focused on ITSM only, maybe APM, maybe SecOps. So that it is really mandatory to understand what it is about. It's not a one size fits all exercise. It is not a technical exercise at all. So you really need to slice and dice the outcome. And therefore the delivery method that is kind of pragmatic for me, depends on the current state, depends on the target state, depends on the current data quality or data sources, and the impact that it might have. My engagements are normally, let's say, between 8 and 12 weeks, with a limited number of hours a week. So you really need to target the scope of what we aim for. Things that you can assess by scripts is, for example, in the right upper corner. You see relationships that are kind of consistent, but between incorrect classes. So I highlight all of those things, and the better the data quality is from a consistent point of view, the easier it is to remediate it by logic. But it also tells a bit about how a customer is like. If it is really consistent, it means that the CMDB is taking seriously. So there is not a discussion needed on the governance, or at least less. If discovery is in place, then that discovery box in the CSDM picture, I leave it out in the CSDM. For me, the CSDM is then more the outer layers around the realized solutions. If the company has service models in place or support models in place, that can be quick wins. Sponsorship is always important, in my opinion, because you need your back protected in engagements like this, because you have so many stakeholders on the table. You might have internal discussions that you need backup from within the company. You cannot come in as an external party and tell people how they should do it. That doesn't work. And my aim for shorter engagement is to limit it based on impact. So if the changes that are needed are too impactful, then you also need management of change, or you need to have end user enablement sessions or trainings. That will be a different scope, I think. So I try to avoid that in my exercises. Yep, please go to the next slide. I use this plate as a talking plate, and I reuse it every time over and over again. So in this picture, I highlighted the current state. I simply make the outlines colored, meaning it is currently in use and the data quality is okay, then it is full green. If it is not in use at all, then I make it red. And if it is somewhat okay, then I make it orange. So in this picture, you see the business service, the business application, and the IT application landscape are all green, but the rest is not really used. And then, I make the same picture as a target state, so they recognize where we go to, and my slides in between will be about the progress. So I make it, I change it on the fly when the progress is done. Yeah, if you go please to the target state. So in this case, we had a very limited or a small target. We want to remediate the construction. I show that example in the next slide. But here, this is really what we aim for in this engagement, and it means that you introduce the according stakeholders on the table to discuss that and to see if we can have, for example, trusted data that is needed, find logic to remediate that, and go for the next step to make a proof of concept approach. Yes, please. So in this example, I found the models as on the left side. So there was structure in it. It was and it was quite consistent, but it was not correct. So we decided to reuse the data that we could see. So for example, the server data included a used for attribute where it states this is a test environment and this one is a production environment. Based on the offering, we copied application servers out of it. The business offering was used in ticketing, so I left that. So I didn't want the impact on the ticketing part, and I reused the existing relationships and added a few new relationships. So on ticket level or on report level, there was not any impact. Even in this one, we left the processes as is. So end user impact or operator impact was not happening as well. And then, yeah, the how-to, I tried to pocket. If you go to the next one. Either with a catalog item to really control what you remediate, and preferable a flow that can be used on top of the catalog item. Sometimes a bit of preparation is needed to enrich the data. So those steps need to be in a runbook. But in this case, I connect a business application with the business service, and that is my input for the flow, and that is doing a technical trick and the realization of the example on the right on the previous slide. And those things can be done if it is really consistent, if it is incorrect but super consistent. In this situation, we had roughly 1,000 business applications. So with a proof of concept, you can do it in this manual way. And then when we proved and validated it and proved the outcome, then we turn it into a script, a fixed script. So you can do it en masse in the end. So based on that validation, we built a runbook. The runbook is tested on another pre-prod instance, and then prepare for remediation on a production instance. That is how I try to do a remediation exercise. Are there any questions on this one?
Awesome. Thank you, Barry.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, Barry, I have one quick question for you. In that remediation, are you often moving like an application service to a business service when people misclassify things? Is there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So is there move scripts that you use, or is there something in the product that?
No, I make my scripts indeed. In this example was fairly simple. I had another example that I had the same example that you were asking now. So they had everything in the application table, which should be in the application service table. And then I make a fixed script or do it also with a catalog item for the proof of concept.
Okay.
The thing is that in not any engagement is the same. You might, over the years, you might have, let's say, your own library with scripts. That might be an option maybe. But every time it seems to be different.
Okay. if you have any simple scripts that are generally useful, that I would put in with the on the community there,
Yeah.
send them my way. That'd be great, just so we can maybe look at a couple that you did to reuse those.
Yeah, I have some collateral. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yep,
I had a
you're
quick
welcome.
question on this slide before we move off. I was just wondering, I can see on here where it says create calculated application service records. So you're talking about this customer previously didn't have application services, and now that you were adding in the application services layer, were you just creating records in the application service table, or were you actually going back and running discovery and creating service maps in those application service records?
No, so if it is a service map, then it is the discover table. So the calculated table is the dynamic service where you actually relate CIs to a application service, and then it is acting as if it is a discovered function. So it syncs a number of levels of your relations to the association table. So the dynamic service is, let's say, the service mapping if you don't have service mapping. That's the difference. You see the difference?
Okay, I think so. I don't know if we've done the calculated. We do the full service mapping, so we're actually running service mapping. So I don't think I'm
Yeah.
no,
So the calculated service is the answer if you do not have service mapping, but still,
Okay.
For the bigger companies, it flattens out your relationship table. So you have to choose a number of levels that you keep in sync. And every time that you relate something or discover something that can be related, then if it is within those number of levels, it also syncs it to the association table, which is for impact analysis, for example, way faster on the bigger CMDBs than going through 3, 4, 5 levels of hierarchy.
Okay. And are you able to have calculated application services as well as service maps? Actually, if you're doing service maps, could you have both of those in the same environment, or can you only have one or the other?
No, you can have both, and the calculated service is an extent of the discovered service. You have to take to consider within a process. So if you, for example, incident or change management, if you do the refresh impacted surface logic, then you have to choose on the properties if you want to use the CMDB rel table, or if you choose for the association table. And that right now is a global property, so it is not, let's say, chosen depending on the offering, on the context of the record.
Okay.
So that makes it kind of global. So if you choose the association table, then normally every application service should either be a calculated service or a mapped service or a tag-based service, because those three act as the same. Those are all extended from that mapped service table.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, for incidents, we're using that association table. Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Great questions. All right, thank you, Barry. So my name is Eric Dohr. I'm a principal platform architect out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the United States, along with David. He's one of my peers that's a platform architect. If you're not familiar with the platform architect role, my peers and I were fortunate enough to work with companies as part of Impact. And one of the common topics that the platform architect is involved in is CSDM. This could be a discussion of transformation. Maybe it's a new environment, or in many cases, we're looking at new product adoption and what that impact is. For my session, I really wanted to just take a step back and share key topics that I've seen companies either face challenges and how to overcome them, or things to maybe consider if you're beginning your journey. Given time, if we're not able to get through the entire deck, I'll make sure that this is given to Jason and John so you guys can reference that. So thank you for having David and I today. So this is the first spot that I started. It's very common to hear, hey, we're adopting CSDM. We want to talk to you, Eric. I love hearing this from my stakeholders. First question I ask, why is CSDM important to you? And The answers vary. And in some cases, it's, well, we were told to implement CSDM. Or maybe, hey, we want to implement CSDM. And I say, why do you want to? And what you start finding out, given that, there's multiple layers, sometimes if a organization can't answer why, I would recommend just stopping, pause, and have that discussion. Really, you need to kind of take a step back to say, what are you trying to do? What are the outcomes you're looking to achieve, and how are you going to measure success? And if you're able to start isolating that and focus, it's going to make your CSDM journey a lot more successful. For instance, common use case, I want to ensure high availability for my business stakeholders. I'm going to reduce outages, both in volume and duration, and I'm going to measure that based on the number of outages and mean time to restoration. Instantly, by having that conversation, you can take that entire CSDM map and start focusing, knowing that, hey, this is going to involve key areas, maybe ITOM if you have event management, IT service management, incident change. You now start to know what are the personas that are involved, and maybe the records that you want to start dialing in on. That is a total different conversation than how do I adopt CSDM holistically. So start there. Next, focusing on the value. If you cannot communicate what the value proposition of these activities are, you need to pause. And given that there are a lot of different personas that are involved with CSDM, you will have to make sure that that different persona understands the value proposition. For example, if I were to say, we need CSDM for incident management, that may not be as successful as saying, hey, as a major incident commander, CSDM is going to allow us to quickly see impacted services as a result of a major incident. As a result, I now know what support teams need to be involved, what customers I need to communicate with. I can see a better response, and hopefully we get better restoration. You can see those two different messages are completely different. You're going to see a lot more success based on that persona. Next, building out a roadmap. As Barry mentioned, understanding and assessing where you're at today and looking at where you want to go. And you start to be able to drive to say, hey, what are the different activities? Who's involved? You're starting to kind of formulate that plan. Now, like any road trip, you're going to have detours along the way. Be flexible, make sure you communicate. This is also where I see a lot of a CSDM roadmap for a customer that maybe has been using ServiceNow for 10 years. It's going to look completely different than a company that has just bought ServiceNow. As Barry mentioned, maybe, hey, we have records, they're just not in the right table. How do we get them to the right bucket? How do we adopt our processes and more? Next, having a conductor. When you think about an orchestra, you have a conductor, they're keeping the time management, the right beat, the right tempo. They're making sure they're influencing and educating the different team members. We have a ton of different musicians and instruments. Maybe the drum line, we have to have them speed up a little bit. Maybe the tuba, you're a little loud. Let's step back a little bit. Let's do some rehearsals. Let's understand and make sure that we're having a great symphony. And this person is able to bring together multiple teams. They understand the big picture of how things start flowing together, and they're giving guidance. If you don't have a conductor, you may be stepping on each other's feet. So having that person that can articulate that vision is pretty imperative. Now that you have a plan and you have a conductor, what are those different resources? Many cases you think CSDM, hey, that's CMDB manager, they're just going to go out and get this going. This is not a superhero. This takes a concept of like the Avengers, where you have multiple superheroes, multiple people involved. And with that, you're going to have to look at, what are they accountable for? What are their roles, responsibilities? The CMDB manager is awesome. They understand how the table structure works. They can start influencing, children tables, data, all those key items, but are they necessarily going to be responsible for data accuracy, the life cycle of the data? The different process owners are going to be brought into how do I consume that information? How do I utilize it? The different service owners, once you get beyond discovery and the application stack, how are you benefiting and achieving objectives through that service? So making sure you can take a step back to go, who needs to be involved? Who needs to be informed, consulted? You're going to see a lot more success. Now that we have our team, the one I think about is like having a pit crew. When you think of a pit crew in F1 racing, the car comes in, you have about 15 people that within 3 to 5 seconds, you're changing tires, you're fueling the car, you're scraping the windshield, you're doing everything. Now that you have a lot of people involved, do they know what is expected of them? Do they know the tools that are involved? Do we have 2 people trying to change the driver's side front tire? The first few cases you're running through this, you may not be able to successfully get to a 5-second pit. Maybe you can't even complete a lap. You ultimately are trying to build out and keep growing and growing until you can complete that race. As part of the pit crew, you're also taking a step back to say, hey, we just had this, what were the challenges we faced and how can we improve, and listening to everyone and giving guidance. So now you have the pit crew, you want to build out the team and skills. So there's a lot of great different offerings that you should consider. One, training. Now learning, there's specific CSDM information, there's product training, certified implementation specialist. Make sure to consider that. If you have not used Now Create, I can't tell you a day that I don't use Now Create with my customers. That's going to give you a lot of our product processes, workshops, and more. Why recreate the wheel when it comes to like organizational change management and creating decks? That aligns to what out of box looks like. ServiceNow resources. I love this forum. This is great that we're able to talk to customers. You're able to network with different peers in the communities, posting on John and Jason's board, and more. If you're fortunate enough to have ServiceNow Impact, make sure you're using our resources. And then if you haven't checked out YouTube, Mark Bodman, Scott Lem, and others, they regularly are posting new CSDM videos. Mark and Caitlin's our product owner for Service Builder, just did a video about how to use Service Builder and CSDM. So make sure to monitor that. You may also want to consider a partner, someone that's been through this journey, why recreate the wheel. And then of course, tap into your network and peers. Staying organized. Of course, this picture is not organized. I've been very fortunate enough to see a few examples where you have a well-running machine. They're running it as a program. There's the right roles, it's organized. You're communicating status reports. The risks are discussed. Are we monitoring? Are we taking activities? You're prioritizing growth. And you start to see everyone kind of come together in that timeline. If you try to do this kind of on the side, you may not be as successful. One of the things that I have seen a lot of success lately is actually having working models in your system at different CSDM maturity levels. It's great. You can point people to the CSDM 4.0 draft. It's theory. It's good concept. If you can start building out models within your instances to then have discussions with different personas, you're going to gain a lot more success. One of the cool examples I saw was a customer that literally had, for CSDM crawl, you have a business application, an application service, and maybe a server. They actually built out mock records like that, built out the relationships, and then they started to use that in their process discussions. Okay, now that we have this, how will this work on incident management? Hey, we want to start building out and adopting digital portfolio management. Okay, cool. Let's get to walk. Let's build out a technical service offering for Windows platform management. Let's see how this starts to work. So by having that actually in your platform and being able to showcase that, you're going to gain a lot more adoption. And then here are just a few other key topics that come to mind. Think about sustainability. It's one of those, at some point, CSDM is a journey. At some point, you may not have as much of an organized project, but you're still going to want to have that help chain. You're still going to want to have like a technical governance board that can answer those inquiries of, hey, we're considering this new functionality in the platform. How would this be modeled? Or maybe I'm a service owner and I've never used ServiceNow. I have a vision of how it should look and how it should work. Can I come sit down with you and we can map that out? There's also a lot of great platform tools such as the CMDB Health, data certification, and more. A lot of workspaces are being released with San Diego and Tokyo. So make sure you're leveraging that. Knowledge management, great. You have a team that understands how you got here and what you did. But think about it. A year from now, is your organization going to be exactly the same? Are you going to have different partners, different resources? How do you make sure that instead of having ad hoc conversations, you have knowledge management that you can point people to for self-help? As an individual starts to get maybe entitlement to ServiceNow, do they go through specific training for your organization of what does it mean to have application service? Great question earlier about the service mapping. You know, now that we have that in place, where can I go? What can I see? How can I expect that? So I've actually seen customers build out a knowledge base called How to Use ServiceNow, that all the different product process teams have put their material in there for individuals to use. So these, I probably could talk for hours on the different topics that come to mind, but these were the ones that really resonated with me as a platform architect. So I want to make sure that we give our teams enough time for questions, but hopefully this resonated with you all.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. There was a question in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Just wanted to see if you saw the question from Durga related to CMDB. If CMDB is heavily customized from an application class, app services point of view, what are the points that help customers in making a decision around instance implementation strategy, new versus current instance?
That is a great question, Durga. You know, unfortunately, each company is going to be completely different of how they got to their journey, the number of records. To me, you know, I love what Barry had earlier of like that basic assessment of like how many records, how much information. Some of the things that I would start to have a conversation about. First, what do you define an application service? A lot of the conversations I have with my stakeholders, I present, hey, these are the key tables as part of CSDM. Here's how we define it. Are you using this table today or maybe another table? And are you defining it the same way? So that's step one. And then step two, given how long it's been, I start to look at, you know, from a management and sustainability standpoint, have they started to customize this? You know, let's say there's 50 fields on the box and you've added 200. You start to go, okay, how did we get here? Can we move to more of an out of box? It's almost the level or the requirements to lift and shift versus the requirements to clean up and organize. You have to weigh that in the value proposition. Barry, anything you would add to that one?
Yeah, so I have seen situations like that with close to 50 custom fields on the application class, where if you were to move it to an application service, you realize, assessing it, that some of those attributes belong to business application level, and some belong to application service level. So you need to identify why is the information on that application table level. Can we move it 2 levels up to business application? Do we have already similar attributes on that table, yes or no? So I think this is a scenario where the business application and maybe the application service both are not used yet. So you might reduce the number of custom fields significantly.
A couple other things that come to mind to consider if you do have impact. There are some different what we call technical accelerators that you may want to consider. They may not be specific to the application service class, but for one I know is called Tune Up Your CMDB, where our expert services come in and they actually will do a CMDB assessment, do a readout, and start talking about opportunities there. So that's a great input mechanism. Another one that a platform architect is delivering as part of impact is what we call a health assessment. And that's taking different concepts such as manageability, performance, security, upgradability, and user experience. And it's quantifying scores by a leading practice of a scan of your instance. With the health assessment, you also get a detailed readout of those findings. So before you decide to, hey, let's just jump to a new greenfield instance, I would start to look at some of those as inputs to know, hey, if the health scan or the health assessment saying that we're in the 80s or 90s, you probably don't want to move instances, you know, but if, you know, it's in the 40s or 50s, you start to go, all right, there's going to be a lot of level of effort to clean up. regardless if you decide to move to a greenfield instance or cleanup, you not only think about how do we get there, but how do we sustain it so that a year from now, you're not in the same boat.
I have a question. This is Lou. From an architectural perspective, think about this from incident management. You select the business service, you select an offering, and for the CI, you select the CI. Well, what happens when that CI you select as a business application? Because out of the box, you can do that. And yet, APM is looking at the business applications, how many incidents were on a business app. But yet DPM is expecting, for the most part, that stuff to be surfaced based on the business service offering. How many incidents are against this offering? Well, following the common service data model, the business application consuming the application service, which is dependent on by the offering, it's almost like it's redundant, right? If the incident has the business application as the CI instead of the offering as the CI, then you're sort of left with a little bit of, hey, you know, when you service that stuff up to DPM, some incidents would be on the business app, some would be on the business service. You know what I mean? So how do the companies make that distinction, which direction they should go? Or is ServiceNow planning to, in the future, you know, close that gap in those selections? Because you could have one or the other, but they're really the same thing, all connected together in the common service data model.
It's a great question. You know, when I start talking to my customers about, say, a process such as incident management, let's say we're doing design review, and I start to see them utilize business application records versus, like you said, application services, service offerings and such. I try to influence that business application is more of a strategic record versus the operational records of business service, technical service, service offering, application service, or the underlying CIs. And how I start to influence that, and I love that we have DPM now, because digital portfolio management, if you've had the ability to establish like service portfolio management, and you can start to link that, and then the roll up, of course, to APM, I think it's starting to make it so that we can actually digest that information. So, and having the right record or record with the right information, sometimes I've seen individuals try to create fields on the business application record that are already redundant. So one is I try to influence that. I can't speak to, are they looking to close the loop on the use of business application as a CI? To me, where I start with is once I've had, you know, when I talk about that example of building a working model, you know, running through that setup to say, hey, out of the box, you know, for instance, here's a instance that I have that, let's say I have a shared server. It's pretty common that you have an underlying CI that's supporting one or many application services. We've all had this happen. Based on this, if this server goes, you know, bump in the night, I need to know what that domino effect is. And there's actually out-of-box properties and settings that by you creating this incident, let's say that there's ITOM, and if you use the UI action of refresh impacted services, this is going to run through based on properties to say, let's look at the affected CIs. What are the different application services that are impacted? So I will see those 4 records on here. Actually, there's more because it's part of a Dynamics CI group. And then because I have the application service to business applications, I can see that relationship. So one, understanding the out-of-box functionality, because I found that many customers, they're trying to build out their own mechanism without knowing this already exists. And then now that this is here, having that understanding of how do I consume that, say, in digital portfolio management. So as you mentioned with DPM, one of the great parts is, you know, it's definitely focusing initially on, say, enterprise applications, but, or I'm sorry, in service portfolio management. But if I say, example, I have Zoom, I have an application service, I have the different service offerings, you can start to get to that roll up. and that aggregate of different KPIs and information. Let me adjust the date so this actually looks good. So I think one is that taking that step back now, depending on where you are in your journey. Of course, it's a lot easier to start from scratch, but this is that conversation to say, what are we trying to achieve and how do we get there? So it's a great question.
I think that's exactly right. If you look, John put something in the chat saying the business app is from a compliance position. So while ServiceNow is allowing users to select that as the CI, and maybe some of the people on the call have been doing that all along. Every company is different, like what you said earlier. Except that, you know, I think when you start looking at APM's got the out-of-the-box indicators, and they're looking for the business app against the incident or the change. So there's got to be an or statement, and I think its ability, you could just create another indicator, and instead of in APM on the analyze portal as part of the application portal portfolio, you just set it to the business service instead of the application, maybe.
Yeah, so that indicator is linked to business application attribute, right?
Right. The out of the box one is, and that's what I'm saying. But yet, that's the compliance position. So you would discourage, as I think I heard, and I've certainly heard John say in the past, don't, if you can help it, don't, you know, set the CI on an incident problem change task to a business app. Set it on the business, you know, as an infrastructure CI, the server itself, or an offering. Yet the offering field is also on those forms too, as well as the business service. But it's really where APM comes in. So it looks to me like APM's trying to catch up maybe to DPM and some of the other things you all are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, but there is so the indicator is a bit of a legacy indicator. So based on that legacy attribute, basically, but the impact analysis you can enable to also make an impact analysis on business application. That's also a property that you can set. And if you do your if you run your impact analysis, it lists up all the business applications that are upstream related to the CI that you selected, and that indicator should use that related list. That is already known, but it is not fixed in the APM part.
Right, that confused me a little bit, but generally saying the out-of-the-box indicator is looking at the business app as you described. And if you're going to choose not to have that as the selection for an incident problem change request, then to get value out of using APM, you're going to need to select some other indicator that's pointing to those other records. And the good news is you can change that. I just was wondering architecturally if that's where you all are headed.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So if you have a CI that is impacting something, it can impact multiple business applications. So that is what you will get as a result if you run your impact analysis. To enrich that impact analysis, you can set the property to also use the business application in your impact analysis. And the indicator should actually use the related list for that to do the analysis on the APM dashboards.
Oh, that's good. I'll have to
so
look into
the
that
logic
properly.
is there from a ticketing point of view. So the business impact or the impact analysis is working fine, but the dashboard is using an attribute that we don't use anymore.
Right. That's what you were talking about earlier with the property. I'll have to look into that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Jane asked, what's the license model for the product? I think she's talking about DPM. Is that right?
DPM is ITSM based, to my knowledge.
Yeah, it's in ITSM or ITBM. Both of those.
No, ITSM. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So digital portfolio management doesn't have, from my understanding, does not have a separate license.
Yeah, it's foundation.
Yeah, exactly. So what it is, if you don't have it already in your environment, you can actually obtain this through either the plugin page or the ServiceNow store. What it does is it pretty much allows to bring it. DPM is sunsetting service portfolio workspace. And what it's allowing us to do is bring together service portfolio management, project portfolio management and application portfolio management, especially when you think about like digital products and how that converges. So the workspace of DPM itself is a license, but of course, if you don't have PPM licensing, you may not use that functionality. Think of it as digital portfolio management is how you digest the information, and based on the roles and access and the ability to create and manage records. So that's how it was explained to me, at least.
Yeah, and it's not something you pay for. If you have ITSM or IT or SPM, I keep on ITBM, then you will it'll make sense to use it. And you do have to install it separately. Like if you install ITSM, DPM doesn't come with it. I think in later versions it might, but you have to go ahead and explicitly turn that plugin on separately. Kind of like the old service portfolio management used to be.
John, can you clarify your comment about the application services, the way it was explained to you? Because I'm trying, if the CI is, for example, a business, if I understand the out of the box, you have a service offering, you have a CI, but you can select the business service offering in the CI field, even though you're selecting it separately in the other field. ServiceNow does allow you to have that. So if you select the business service offering in the CI field on an incident, the offering depends on the app service. The app service is consumed, or the business app is consuming that app service. You're saying that scenario would roll up to DPM?
What I'm saying in DPM, and this is the way Caitlin was demoing it the other day, and she showed business applications, and in business apps, there was an incident count on the operational view of a business app, right? So when you click on that run tab on a business app, there's incidents in there. And those incidents, from what I understand, those incidents come from they bubble up from the app services. They're not incidents on the business app itself like they are in APM.
I hope so. I don't know.
Yeah. Double check with Caitlin, but in that demo, if you go back to that recording, because I explicitly remember that, I'm like, why would you put an incident counter on a business app when you don't do incidents against business app? And then she explained that it comes from the app services. I'm like, that would make a lot of sense.
Okay, thank you, John, for clarifying.
That's my understanding, John.
I'm going to have to validate that, sir.
Yeah, we'll have to double check with Caitlin, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Yeah, that would be good.
All right. Any other questions? Looks like did we address everything in the chat?
I think so.
Okay.
Good
This
stuff.
was great content today. I can't wait to shout this out on social media because this is questions I get all the time. And Eric, coming from, I used to work in Ivan's org as a platform
Oh,
architect.
nice.
You nailed it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been talking a lot of theory for a couple of years now. So it's really great to see the real world stuff. Appreciate that.
Yep, no problem.
So I just wanted to end it. If you guys can see my screen, with just a little bit of our closing here. And again, feel free to join the community. And then you can provide comments on the sessions there as well. If any questions that you have come up later that you want to address as you watch the video or communicate inside the forum, feel free to comment in there, and we will provide feedback as well as the speakers here. So again, thank you for your time today. Sign up for future sessions. You can get the content out there as well. So download the previous sessions content and presentations. And of course, we post the videos here on YouTube, so you can also comment there and then provide feedback to each session in the comment session. So again, thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back to John for any last words. If not, we'll conclude today.
Excellent.
All right.
Good job pulling everything together, Jason. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you all. Look
Bye-bye.
forward to seeing you in a future session. Thank you.